What is up, everyone? Happy Fantasy Friday today. Boom. Senlin Ascends by Josiah Bancroft. There are so many things to talk about here. I don't even, know where to begin, but I can do it all spoiler-free, so that's good. So, the plot. Man named Thomas Senlin and his wife go to this tower to vacation called the Tower of Babel, and they go in, and Thomas Senlin loses his wife right away. So yeah, that's chapter 1, and then the rest of the book is Thomas trying to find his wife. So yeah, that's where we pick up. And also, if anyone's read this book and is looking to read the next book, I will be reading it in my Discord and talking about it this month at some time, hopefully. So yeah, they're in this tower. Tom Senlin doesn't really know what to do. And Mr. Senlin's a very well-defined character early on. He's kind of your stereotypical book-smart person who's not necessarily street-smart, not necessarily good in many social situations. And you see that with his early interactions with Maria, his wife. And Senlin's wife is very, free-spirited. She seems to like adventures. She doesn't take things too seriously. She's not really a planner, And Thomas Senlin is really a planner, likes to have things organized. During his trip to the Tower of Babel, he has, the stereotypical tourist guidebook that everyone has. And at the start of every chapter, there's a epigraph, which is just a passage from the guidebook, which is very interesting. So we kind of learn things about this tower. And this tower is pretty interesting because it kind of begs the question, is this tower a real place? Or is it a magical realism place that you would find in Love in the Time of Cholera or 100 Years of Solitude or some other magical realism sort of story, which I've not read any Gabriel Garcia Marquez yet. But if you have, let me know if you think that this sort of magical realism is Gabriel Garcia Marquez's sort of similar style. But there's one line pretty early on in the book about the tower, which was the first time I was is this tower real? What is happening? Is this all a dream? And basically the line said that the tower had a different number of levels based on the person who was in the tower. And I'm that's weird. Is this tower a metaphor for something? And I had a few theories on what the tower is a metaphor for. I thought it was a metaphor for time at one point. I kind of think it's a metaphor for a social ladder. It could be a metaphor for capitalism, right? Because think about these things. How do you win capitalism? Well, you might have a different view on that than I would. So therefore the tower would have different amount of level. Or how do you climb to the top of the social ladder? Well, you might have a different view of that than I would. And then as we go through this book, a lot of the levels are very much oh, this isn't a real place, the parlor. That's a very interesting level, which does not feel real. Whereas some of the levels feel non-fiction. And yeah, it was crazy. The different levels, it felt like you were in reading different books almost. But the thing that brings it all together, I think, is Josiah Bancroft's writing style. It was very distinct. It was very old school classics, but more understandable, I guess. It takes all the good parts of Charles Dickens writing and gets rid of the overly wordiness and the boring stuff that all those classics writers talk about. And the other thing that connects it within the story is Senlin himself. Senlin's just such a normal guy. It felt like Josiah Bancroft followed around someone who was a tourist in some foreign country who had just gotten scammed 4 times by random people on the street, and he's just recording all of that person's thoughts and all the, oh, I trusted them, the naive things that tourists might think. And yeah, even though Senlin obviously does stupid things, he does stupid things that are relatable almost for a regular person. And Senlin is a teacher, so think about it this. How many other teachers could you see going out there and doing your normal fantasy stuff, fighting dragons? And it's cool because Senlin's realistic in that way, where he has a certain set of skills, he has a comfort zone, and he's struggling when he's outside of that comfort zone. So yeah, I guess the things I didn't really like about this book were some aspects of the plot felt a little bit episodic. And it made it like certain parts of the plot feel disconnected from other parts of the plot a little bit, to me at least. And then also Senlin wasn't super likable right away just because he was so like average and stuff. But I think you'll grow to like him more as he learns more about the world. You kind of like learn with him. But I mean, look, the strongest part about this book is the themes. And like I'm hesitating to actually rate this book because when I finished it, I'm like, that's it? What? Like, this isn't like, how is this a book? But it's not really about the story so much as it is about the journey and the themes. And the themes are just so real. Like, think about like Martin Luther King talking about rugged individualism for the poor. Now, when you're reading this book, there's all of that sort of individualism for the poor sort of feel to everything that's going on. Whereas for the rich, the full Martin Luther King quote is rugged individualism for the rich. And whereas for the rich, like if you look at the full MLK quote, it's socialism for the rich, rugged individualism for the poor. And, you know, when you think about like people who are working regular jobs in this book, what is it like for them? Why are there so many people who are looking to screw over other people? Well, maybe it's rugged individualism and a sort of like lack of compassion. And Senlin's, you know, a small town guy. I mean, if you're from a small town, everyone knows each other. You can't really be mean to other people. I mean, or you can't hustle other people because like everyone will know like the next day what happened in a small town. But then the tower's like a big city. And it kind of begs the question, who's screwing people over in this tower? Is it like the poorer hustlers who are undoubtedly in some cases scammers? Or is it like the owner class who has a bunch of workers and wants to pay them as little as possible, wants to educate them as little as possible? And it's so interesting from Senlin's perspective, right? Because, you know, he's a teacher, so he can read and write and do all that good stuff. But like not everyone in this tower can do that. And not everyone is trained to do that. It's by design, actually, that people aren't able to do that. And think about in the real world, like structural designs within society of large groups of people not being able to read or write. And while you've got like the dark ages, right, where there's no printing press yet, so there's no real books yet. So the only people who can write are the people in power. So the people in power can make those books say whatever they want, right? Because if no one can read, how can they possibly contradict them? So it's like a way of the powerful like manipulating people. And there are so many examples of systems of power in this book, and presumably later on in the series as well, of power being manipulated by the owner class to subjugate the poor people. And it's not just reading and writing, it's like debt. If someone's indebted to you, I mean, you can basically make them work for you, right? And just like these sort of power dynamics are very much explored. And one thing that actually did frustrate me a little bit in this book was the non-explicit criticisms of the power structure. So Josiah Bancroft would use the word like tyrannical or like corruption a lot to describe like, you know, the social or political or whatever climate on a certain level of the tower. And it's like, well, what's corrupt? What is tyrannical? And it's like, I mean, I get that it is, but I want like those more specific criticisms of power. But because it's done through like the lens of Senlin and the people he's talking to, it may not be like, you know, a super detailed dissertation about what exactly is corrupt or what is problematic within the society. And in fact, it's almost easier to subjugate the society if everyone's like, yes, it's corrupt, it's, you know, tyrannical. And, you know, if people have that realism about the world and, you know, they're so beaten down by the world or by the tower that they feel as though they can't change the world, it makes so much sense. Like, why would you focus on real substantive criticisms of a tyrannical society if you can't change the society or you don't have like the power structures in place to change the society? And yeah, just the themes in this book, you know, I mean, clearly you could tell they're making me think, and I think they would make you think as well. I guess it depends how thoughtful you like to be when you're reading books. I know some people are more like in favor of just submitting to sort of like the hierarchy of the world, or at least not questioning the hierarchy of the world. And, I feel like those people might not love this book because this book's themes do ask a lot of questions. And like, the plot of this book on its own, without thinking about the themes or thinking about like the society built in the world, I don't know if that's enough for someone to like this book. But I mean, what do I know? Because also, while reading this book, I was thinking about like George Orwell, who is, I would say, probably more explicit than Josiah Bancroft in his society building and like criticizing specific cultures and like, or other societies, or, political and cultural phenomena that arise within some societies. And, some people read Orwell and just come to the totally wrong conclusions, or at least people come to conclusions that he's not really intending them to get to. Because, like, I mean, look, as people know, Orwell was pretty far left politically. But, like, if you see someone quoting 1984 in the media, they're always like, and this is why leftism is bad. And it's like, no, I don't think that's what Orwell was saying. So yeah, if people can misinterpret Orwell's works that poorly, which is much more politically explicit in its themes and like cultural critiques than Senlin Ascends is, in my opinion, then I feel like someone could like totally misinterpret the themes in this as well. Like, I see this book and see it as like a criticism of rugged individualism, but someone could read this and be like, also reading Ayn Rand and being like, yeah, rugged individualism, that's amazing. So yeah, I was all over the place in this review. Let me know what you guys think of this review. I did talk a lot about themes. I feel like this is a very theme heavy book, so that's why I focused so much on them. And yeah, let me know what you guys think the tower is a metaphor for if you've read this book. Also, I think the cover art is very nice. Look at this. And like, clearly the man inside the tower can't get out. So maybe you could like add that to your thought process of the themes of this book and like, the metaphor of the tower is. And yeah, see you guys next time.